We have many examples in the Bible of individuals who have been exemplary in meeting God's requirements in their lives. We also have some modern-day examples of those who have done well in doing what God expects of them, even when they have been pressured. Brother Suter is going to help us see why we need to be exemplary when it comes to God's requirements, our responsibility, and why this is so important by discussing the subject, be exemplary in meeting God's requirements. This is going to be interesting to see how we can do this. Brother Suter will consider this subject. Brother Suter, please.
Now, many of you probably remember John Kennedy. Some of you may not, but he was in an airplane crash. And they say that apparently the reason was that he wasn't educated when it came to looking at the instrument panel in the aircraft. That when you get into fog or smoke or something, you have to look at the panel and know which direction you're going. And they feel that he thought he was going, they felt that he may have considered himself going down or up when in reality he was going down. But they even say that some very accomplished pilots feel that when they're in an airplane and they have to use just the instruments, that they really feel that they are going up when they're going down. Now, when you think about the system we live in, the system makes us feel a certain way. That we may look at something and emotionally we make decisions on our actions. So where do we go? What instruments do we use? Well, we have the Bible and we have the faithful slave. Now, that's not so profound. We knew that. The point is that sometimes we have the Bible, we have the slave, and we still feel that isn't what I need. I need something else. Well, that's where we're going to have some problems and some difficulties. Because 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31 says, whether you're eating or drinking or doing anything else, we do all things for God's glory. Now, the Bible is telling us that we need to do all things for God's glory. That means that we have an obligation that we are responsible to be exemplary. And when you think about it, there is not anything that Jehovah's Witnesses do that we can't be, it says we can't, you don't have to be exemplary, don't worry about it. No, everything we do, we're exemplary. Now, why is that so important? Well, now this year, our year text is not, it's telling us that Jehovah's going to protect us, look after us. But last year's text said that Jehovah's Day is coming. So why are we exemplary? Well, because Jehovah's Day is coming, that's all. So we're exemplary in everything we do. The system can sneak up on us. This system can kind of derail us real quickly. We're going down the road, all of a sudden it's like, how did I get here? It's like a child, a young person comes home to the parents, and this has happened to all of you parents, I know. 15 years old, 16 years old, child says, I've decided that I don't want to have a curfew of 10 o'clock or 11. I want to stay out till 1 or 2. What does mom and dad say? They say no. Now, what does the child say? The child says, you don't trust me. And then what does the parent say? You're absolutely right. I don't trust you. I don't even trust myself when it comes to this system of things, so let's not go there. Let's go somewhere else. But isn't that true? We can't trust the system at all if we're going to be exemplary. And friends, we know that because we have so many examples in the Bible, real people, real feelings that got off course. Now, there's one example in the book of Zephaniah, happened in Zephaniah's day. People in Zephaniah's day, they thought they did not need a standard. They didn't need to live by God's thinking or way. And yet, they kept telling Zephaniah, here's the way we're going to do it. Now, it's in the book of Zephaniah, and we're going to look at chapter 1. Now, if you if you realize that I told you a while back it was Zephaniah so you could find it, is why I said that. So then you could look for it and kind of peruse through those books. It's after Habakkuk, by the way. Habakkuk is just as hard to find as Zephaniah is. And it's before Haggai, and he's also hard to find. But if you look in Zephaniah chapter 1, we're going to read verse 12. And I'd like you to notice that these individuals didn't think the standards of God were necessary. So now in verse 12 of Zephaniah 1, it says, "And it must occur at that time that I shall carefully search Jerusalem with lamps, and I will give attention to the men who are congealing upon their dregs, and who are saying in their heart, Jehovah will not do good, and he will not do bad." So it doesn't matter. God doesn't really care what we do. Well, that was their thinking. The standard of God was kind of a slide rule. Didn't matter. So their thinking was rather erroneous, and because of it, it got them in trouble because of the way they reasoned on matters. Now we know how they reasoned, because if you look at that verse, it says, about in the middle, it says, "And I will give attention to men who are congealing upon their dregs, and who are saying in their heart." What he's making reference to here, congealing upon their dregs, is when you take a bottle of wine or a keg of wine and you leave it and don't move it, that the bottle of wine, if you put it on the side, you'll notice that there's some kind of sediment in the bottom or on the side. Well, what they were saying is, leave it there, don't move the bottle, don't move the keg, don't move it, because then things will start moving around in there, and we don't want that. We're satisfied with the way things are. Our life is comfortable, so we want to do it our way. And we don't want anything from God. We don't want divine intervention. So that's what they're saying. And then they say, Jehovah doesn't care. Isn't that like today? I mean, don't people today say that? You know, do your own thing, do what you want to, don't worry about the consequences. Just do it, and if the consequences turn out bad, well, sorry. But just try it, see what happens. Yeah, that's kind of a dumb way of looking at things, isn't it? I mean, you have to consider what the consequences are. You have to think about, okay, what if I do this, and this, where's it going to take me? Now, how do we know which way to go? We got the Bible and the faithful slave. It may not feel good. We may not feel it. It's like, I don't think it fits me. Did we read it in the Bible? Did the organization help us to understand this is the way we're going to do it? So if that's it, then that's the way we go. Because the Creator has standards that we're supposed to live by. And it gives a quality of life to us. Now you think about coming here to the assembly hall. You come to the assembly hall and you go out back there and you have a drink of water. Now when you get up to that water fountain and you start drinking, you don't think, well, now where's this water coming from? Now one day we may have to worry about where it's coming from, but right now not so. And it's a little bit, lots of chlorine in it, but it's still, we're not going to have to worry about coming in here and getting sick, especially our children. The standard has been established by the government, but we don't worry about it because we know we're going to be protected by that standard. The International Organization for Standardization makes this comment that happens to us when we become kind of blasé about standards. If there were no standards, we would soon notice. If we are usually unaware of the role played by standards in raising levels of quality, safety, reliability, and efficiency. Standards. We don't take them for granted. Standards are there for our protection. Build an assembly hall, certain standards, kingdom hall, house, whatever it is. There are standards. Man sets standards, he values standards, then why is it we question whether our Creator has standards? He has standards that we have to live by. So just as in Zephaniah's day, those individuals are saying he doesn't care. Well, no, they did. Jehovah did care. As a matter of fact, in Zephaniah's day, there were individuals, a minority of people, who lived by the standards that Jehovah established, which proves to us that it can be done. It can be done. Now, about 84 years earlier than this comment that Zephaniah made, Isaiah commented on how people were thinking. And it's in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 10. And let's see what he says and what these individuals, the kind of thinking they should have avoided, but they didn't. It's Isaiah 30, and it's verse 10. Now here, the people are saying to Isaiah. Now Isaiah's telling him, here's what Job wants you to do, but they don't like that idea. So in verse 10 it says of Isaiah 30, who have said to the ones seeing, you must not see, to the ones having visions, you must not envision for us any straightforward thing. Speak to us smooth things, envision deceptive things, lie to us. That's what they were saying. We don't want to hear what God has to say. Make it easy. Well, now, when we think about what happened here with Isaiah, when they told him that, he kind of got his back up because he said, no, I'm going to tell you exactly what Jehovah wants. If you don't like it, that's too bad. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. Because if I don't tell you, who's going to? So he told them. Now, that you think about today. We go out in the ministry, and there are people that feel that way about us. We go out, and they don't like what we're saying. They don't want to talk to us. We're not intimidated by that. Isaiah wasn't intimidated by it. Zephaniah wasn't intimidated by it. But at times it's not just people in the territory that need to hear what is beneficial for them. Sometimes it's us. That's why we have gatherings like this at a circuit assembly or district convention. We hear talks and we walk away and say, woo, that was a kind of a heavy one. So we hear things that we need to consider. I mean, we talked about a number of things today. But now, when we need something and we have a friend that tells us, here's the problem, don't we appreciate the friend? I mean, shouldn't we? Let's suppose tonight that half a dozen, 10 of you go out to Smoky Bones for dinner. And so you're sitting around the table, and the one brother is at this end, and there's another brother at that end, and this brother looks at that brother, and he sees this big glob of barbecue sauce on the side of his face. It's just kind of hanging there. So now, he can't just blurt out, come on, you're making a pig out of yourself, would you fix your face? You can't do that, so you have to kind of give him a hint. So you take your napkin, and you put it, you look right at him, and you put it up your face, and you go, and you hope he gets it. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Let's suppose he gets it. Now, do you think later he's going to come up to you and say, you embarrassed me? No, he's going to say thank you. Because if you'd have let him go, he'd have gone home, he'd have maybe stopped at a few places. Then at home he'd had to worry about, after he looked in the mirror, he's got this thing hanging off his face, who did I see, and who am I going to have to go back and explain why I had this all over my face? It saved him a lot of anxiety. And really should thank us for it, even though maybe a little embarrassing. Now, we can't argue that the Creator knows what we need. He knows what we need. He's going to tell us. He's going to tell us what we need. It's like the Creator to us is like the manufacturer is to the car. The manufacturer tells us that this car needs an oil change every 3,000 miles or so. And we're driving this car for 10,000 miles. We say it seems to be working fine. Why give it an oil change? After a while, the motor drops out of the front of the car, and we can't understand why. Well, because we didn't follow directions in how to run this car. The same is true for us. And the thing about it, we have to just kind of get it in our brain and in our heart that Jehovah knows best. It doesn't matter how we feel about it. He knows best. So when we think about this being exemplary as Jehovah's people, it's very important for us because, man, the spirit of the world today is just really sucking us in. I mean, it's pulling on us. Every day it pulls on us. It has a bearing on our spiritual life, our behavior spiritually. So now, the question for us, would it be all right just for a few minutes to talk about something very specific? Would it be okay to do that? Now, if I see one person do this, I'm okay. All right, that's fine. I don't need anybody. If the rest of you don't want me to, it's too bad. I already had one say they want to do it. Okay, so we're going to talk about something. Now, what we're going to talk about may sound like it's coming to the young people. This isn't a youth-bashing talk. It's just we're going to talk to young people, but older ones are going to benefit from this because it's not just young people that are being captivated by the Internet. But sometimes we see our young people and older ones being enticed by it. The Internet is really addictive to some of our friends. Just to make a point, and I'm going to ask a question, but don't flinch, don't roll your eyeballs, don't do anything that anybody around you is going to know that, uh-oh, that's me. Just be cool, and then let me just ask this question. How many of you have ever had someone, as you're talking on the Internet, they start talking dirty? They start using foul language, just out of the blue. It happens all the time. One father made this comment. He said, "It was a shocking realization that pedophiles can use the Internet to lure minors into base sexual activities." My question for that father is, where have you been living? Have you been on some planet somewhere? I mean, because that is something that is becoming a real issue. That pedophiles, it's like a smorgasbord. Just go on the Internet and pick out what you want. You know, 3.5 years ago, we were in another district, obviously, and on Saturday afternoon, we were encouraged to talk about the Internet. And so I asked the friends in a group of about this size, and please don't raise your hand, how many of you have been on myspace.com? And I asked them to raise their hand. So in this group, maybe 20. Not too many. Now, 3.5 years go by, and we hear about myspace.com. Now, there are other ones, sure, but we're not going to do those. They did a study on myspace.com, and we say, well, you know, pedophiles, this, how many could be? On just that one site, they found 7,000 pedophiles on myspace.com. 7,000. Now, some states are trying to enact laws where they can go in and take them, but because of freedom of whatever, you know, everything is freedom of this and that and keep everybody out there happy. So the point is they can't do a whole lot at this time, but they're trying. That's a dangerous medium. Dangerous, as we had demonstrated here for us today. Sexual predators pretend to be whoever, and they try to lure individuals into a compromising situation. Did you see where that parent got mad at another girl because they had said something to her girl, and so she became a friend of the girl that she didn't like? Talked to her for quite a while and got her friendship. And the little girl thought she was talking to a boy. And then the boy says, "I don't want to have anything to do with you," which was really the mother of the daughter who the girl had offended. And the girl hung herself. Now, that's the kind of power we're talking about. According to one study, 1 in 5 kids who uses the Internet has been solicited for sex. 1 in 5. One newspaper stated that one child in 33 between the age of 10 and 17 were aggressively stalked through computer conversations. 1 in 33. Now that's, we could get around that when we say, 1 in 33. That's not so bad. 1 in 33. I'm not going to be one of the 33. I'm sure. To have that kind of logic and to think that way is like saying we're in the woods and we have 33 wolves chasing us, and 32 stop chasing us. We still have one chasing us. Do we feel better? No. Well, that's what happens with the Internet. 1 in 33. There's still one out there. So we can be affected by these individuals. Young people are surprised to find that the young person they're supposed to be talking with and getting involved romantically is some male adult prisoner that's just talking to anybody that he or she can talk to. That's why this proverb in Proverbs 22:3 is good for us. It says, "Shrewd is the one that has seen the calamity, and proceeds to conceal himself, but the inexperienced have passed along and must suffer the penalty. We are experienced because we're being told what to do. Our organization is helping us. The Washington Post quoted an author as saying, Internet dating can be bad because people get deceived, people often switch sexes, income levels, race, criminal records, mental health histories, marital status, often remain secret long into the relationship. And some claim to be Christians. Now, why all the deception? Well, it's easy. One young man said, it's very easy to pretend to be something you're not when you're typing on a computer screen. It's also, when you think about it, it's lying, it's deceptive, there's some intrigue in there, and it's exciting. So an individual becomes hooked on it. It's like, well, this is fun. So the problem is that it creates a great deal of pain and misery for those outside as well as the one that's being involved. Some of the dangers are that we become so engrossed in that aspect of our life, important things like family, friends, responsibilities become secondary. Now, that doesn't mean that all chat rooms are wrong, because think about it, we have www.watchtower.org, so that's, we use it, it's beneficial. So we're not saying everything on the internet is wrong, it's just that we have to be careful of the kind of subjects or the kind of people that we talk to. Abigail says, I was talking with some people in a chat room when a male asked me if I knew any 14-year-olds. He wanted to have sex with them. He said he was willing to give them money for sex. Now, that's not an isolated case. That's why the government, the FBI, is trying to figure out a way to get these pedophiles off the internet. They haven't figured it out yet, but they're trying. Now, the Bible is very open when it talks about sex and relationship between individuals. But we also have to realize that the Bible is telling us how to protect ourselves from those who want to take advantage of us. A young brother says, I was chatting online when someone with an immoral picture popped up on my screen. The person that I was chatting with had sent it to my computer. Now, we already mentioned chat rooms. Some are not so good, some are all right, some aren't, whatever. But one 19-year-old girl in Australia said you can be relatively friendless in a real life and then suddenly have hundreds of friends online. Now, it's not just being online, it's not just computers. There are a lot of things we can become addicted to. I mean, you think about what's happening with cell phones today. It's kind of sad because some of our friends are really addicted to cell phones. I mean, they can't go a day or two without the phone. Now, you remember this brother here, it said the Watchtower commented on his alcohol thing, and it gave some questions to ask. And one of the last ones was, can you go without alcohol for a month? Can we go without a cell phone? Now, of course, if you tried to go without a cell phone, some of you with businesses, you'd be done in a month if you went without your cell phone. But, when that came out, that happened in that Watchtower, my wife and I decided we were going to try to go without alcohol for a month. And we did, of course, we did. It wasn't a problem. Of course, moving to a new district, may create or trigger an episode. But the point is, I'm kidding. Don't misquote me on that one, by the way, please. I'm just kidding. But now, if we have a phone and we feel that we have a little difficulty with that, well, then try to go without it for a day or two. And I'll tell you something. We have young people that can text message in their pocket. As a matter of fact, I've walked around this building, not today, but in other times we've been here and I've watched it. They can text message. They just have their phone in their pocket and they just text and just pull it out. Yep, that's it. I'll tell them this, and I'll say, it's okay. Yeah, if you're text messaging right now, by the way, you're hooked. Yeah, if you're doing it right now, you better see somebody, because you need some help. And what happens is it's not just the fact that they text message or that we text message. The fact is that some of the messages are not very clean, as in the use of verbiage. In some areas, now some might say, well, it's just a paranoia. He's just an old guy, and that's the reason he says that. Don't tell me I'm an old guy to my face. No, you can't. I don't care. In some areas, this is a quote now, in some areas nearly a third of the boys and girls between 15 and 17 of age have had sexual intercourse. Half of the teens between 13 and 19 have had oral sex. One parent said, parents would be absolutely horrified and embarrassed if they knew what their children were discussing or posting. So we have to analyze, what are we doing? Parents, do we know what our children are doing? You young people, how do you view this? We talked about alcohol in moderate use, how we have to be exemplary. We can't just accept the way the community goes. There are communities that condone or excuse abortion, blood transfusion, drunkenness, homosexuality, lesbianism. We don't go along with that. We use the Bible. What does the Bible say? 1 Corinthians 10:31. What does it tell us? Whether we're eating or drinking or doing anything else, we do all things for God's glory. So it doesn't matter what other people think. We live by Bible principles. When it comes to anything in our life, the way we live our life, the kind of things we get involved in. And we know from examples in the Bible that anything can happen. I mean, we think of, we're being told lots about being materialistic. And we say, well, no, that can't happen to me. Well, now, think about it. There's a man in the Bible in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 10. His name was Demas. Paul said, for Demas has forsaken me because he loved the present system of things, and he's gone to Thessalonica. Now, who was Demas? Well, he was really kind of a high beamer in the Christian congregation, quite frankly. I mean, he was a man that was looked up to, because when Paul wrote to the Colossians and Philemon, he used Demas' name. He said, we send our greetings. By the way, his name could have been Demetrius, but the point is that Paul isn't going to use somebody's name or say we're sending our greetings if he didn't have some kind of spiritual status in the Christian congregation. Well, we know why he left. For one reason, we know that he was involved in material things. But the other reason could be that he could see the handwriting on the wall for Paul. He said, if Paul keeps acting like this, pushing this government, he's going to die. And he said, I'm out of here. And he went to Thessalonica. So he could have felt that he was not going to be martyred as he felt Paul was going to be. So there's a lot of ways that we can be exemplary in the way we conduct ourselves, just around other friends, encouraging them in the congregation. We look for ways of trying to strengthen one another. We think of that in Israel. There are two seas, and you probably remember. There's the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. The Sea of Galilee, for every drop of water that comes in, a drop of water goes out. So it's alive in the sea. It's alive. Fish, people play in it, and children swim in it. The Dead Sea, the water comes in, but nothing goes out. Now, on the shore, there's a lot of things going on, but in the water itself, it's dead. It just kind of contains itself. It's not concerned, in essence, about what happens outside of it. We become like that sometimes. We can become inactive, unfruitful. We don't worry about anybody else. We really kind of become like the Dead Sea. But if we have privileges in the congregation, if we're exemplary, then we're going to be able to help other people. Look for ways of encouraging one another. See, when Paul wrote to the Galatians, in Galatians chapter 5, the fruitage of the Spirit is there and the works of the flesh is there. But in Galatians chapter 5, verse 21, he said, and things like these. So he named a number of things, fornication, adultery, all those. And then he said, and things like these. Now, we talked about that a little bit earlier today, but that expression, things like these, that means that Paul is saying, I'm not going to give you a whole list of stuff. I'm not going to give you a list of things that you have to do. Just things like these. Figure it out. Use your mind. Be perceptive. Be concerned about what I should do or shouldn't do. So if we're discerning and perceptive, we'll know what we're supposed to do. Things like these. For example, you go to the doctor and he says you got to eat more fruits and vegetables. You have to avoid pie and ice cream and things like these. Now, would it be hard to determine where cake comes in? Really? I mean, he didn't say cake, so it must be all right? No, come on. They have a sign on the freeway. It's to keep people from thumbing a ride, from hitchhiking. And the sign says no stopping, no standing, no parking. They want to keep us off the highway. So because it says no stopping, no standing, no parking, it'd be okay to lie down on the side of the road with your thumb up? Not really. Come on. I mean, we could figure that out. So now, when we look at the fruitage of the Spirit of God and we look at the works of the flesh, which list does rap music that degrades women, calls for killing policemen, and wants to sleep with everyone in the neighborhood, which does it belong on? So now, the principle also applies to reading material, movies, television programs, computer games, websites, gaming online. What list does it go on? Shouldn't be hard. The Bible tells us we have to be exemplary in the way we conduct ourselves. We talked about grooming and dress today, but it all boils down to what is the mind of the Christ. What would he do in this situation? And when we think about being exemplary, we mentioned this earlier, but man, there's nothing that Jehovah's Witnesses don't do. You have to be exemplary. That's it. You want to be a pioneer, auxiliary pioneer. Got to be exemplary. It's on the application. You want to go in foreign service. You want to go and work at Bethel. The question is, are they exemplary? You want to go to Gilead? Go to Bethel? Be an elder, ministerial servant? You want to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses? You've got to be exemplary. That's it. That's what the Bible tells us is required of all of us. And when you think about elders being exemplary, ministerial servants being exemplary, when Paul wrote to Timothy and Titus, he said there were 16 different qualifications. And we can't say, well, that's just for elders or ministerial servants. I mean, when you think about those qualifications, he's talking about being irreprehensible, modern habits, sound in mind, orderly. Now, we all want to be balanced. We all want to be orderly. We don't want to be a lover of money. That means we want to be exemplary. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to take the time so that we can, when we see a situation develop, that we can say, okay, now, what is the principle that governs this particular situation? Because there's no rule, no law, no line of here's what it's supposed to be. Well, we study the Bible. We study with our children. We've been told forever to take time with our children and study with them. And that's a requirement for us, isn't it, as Christians? I mean, you think about this. Millions of children, literally millions of children, waited in a line or lines so that they could get a copy of the latest Harry Potter book. Millions worldwide. Now, if worldly children can stand in line for hours to get a book about wizards and the occult, couldn't families of Jehovah's Witnesses spend time learning about Jehovah and Jesus by studying the Bible? And by the way, that book, Harry Potter, is not a little book. It's a thick book that these kids are reading. So when we read the requirements that are in the Bible for our brothers, elders, ministerial servants, we realize that's for all of us. It's for everybody. We need to be exemplary. We think about what happened in Noah's day. It said he entered into the ark and everyone else took no note. Well, we think about taking no note. See, if there's anything in our life, any mundane concerns, maybe even normal activities of life, if those things crowd out being exemplary, we have to think seriously about it. If there's anything that we're doing, anything that we have to watch for, then we have to be able to say that we fear God and we give Him glory. Now, that scripture says, fear God, give Him glory in the Revelation. And it says, because the hour of judgment by him has arrived. Now that hour that angel was telling John about, that hour of judgment, is a very brief period. It's the period between the pronouncement of the message and the execution of those who are not listening to the message. So it's just kind of a in-between. It's a period of time, and Jehovah's telling us about that period of time. So between now and Jehovah's day, there's just sort of a pause. Between now and Jehovah's day, a pause. So that was a pause. What'd you do? Say, hey, he's paused. I'm going to go out and get pizza. It's a pause. I think I'll go back to my room and take a nap. It's a pause. I think I'll call my stock man and buy some stocks. No, a pause is to get our attention. That's what a pause is for. Well, now, is Jehovah getting our attention? Because Peter said in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12, maintain your conduct fine among the nations, that in the thing in which they are speaking against you as evildoers, they may, as a result of your fine works, which they are eyewitnesses, glorify God in the day for his inspection. In all aspects of our life, friends, in all aspects of our life, we need to be exemplary in our conduct. We then are able to move other people, they respond, because in reality, we are flying in a dark system. People in this world, they don't have a clue where they're headed. They don't know where they're going, up, down, or otherwise. Well, we do. We know that we're living in a world that is governed by guesswork, by speculation, supposition, by theories. And what we have to do is keep reminding ourselves that we have instruments that we can use. We have to trust in those instruments. We have God's Word and the direction from the faithful slave. And if we follow those instructions, no matter how we feel, the result is going to be that we will survive the Great Tribulation, Armageddon, because we are exemplary in meeting God's requirements.